Missouri did not make an appearance in the EA Sports Top 25 list that they put out today. And while I think that's a mistake, chalk it up for another big win for Eli Drinkowitz and staff. Gives another arrow in his quiver of being able to maintain the underdog role, even after winning 11 games last year and returning an offense that should strike fear in just about everybody they play. See, Missouri can remain the hunter and not the hunted. When you look at their schedule, even though there's no easy schedule in the SEC, regardless of what anybody says, their toughest road trips are Bama and Texas A&M. There's no Texas. There's no Georgia. Their non-conference consists of Murray State, UMass, Boston College, and Buffalo. Not exactly murderer's row. But the key ingredient for Missouri's success is that their players have already tasted it at a very high level, but they didn't win a ring. See, their thirst got quenched to a certain extent, but not all the way. They know how to win, but also know they must do more. Now, we can talk about their elite stars at the skill position like Luther Burden, who could be the number one wide receiver taken in next year's draft, and Brady Watch Me Cook. But to me, what they return and have added on the offensive line should be able to hold up well enough to keep their offense operating at a high capacity in every game they play in. Yes, they did lose All-American left tackle Javon Foster to the league, but they did add Caden Green, which should shore up the interior of the left side of that offensive line, even though he does play guard. And Missouri does have depth that they've brought up at the left tackle position. They've also added a junior college player that should be able to help out right away. Now they return their center and the entire right side of the offensive line. But the biggest question will be on the defensive side of the ball. But I do expect Missouri, even after losing Darius Robinson and some key pieces in the back end, to be good enough to compete in every game they play in. Now, there will be times where they have to put up a lot of points, but they have the personnel to do it. So sleep on Missouri at your own peril, because this team is in the perfect spot, and all the things that need to line up are lining up. Returning personnel, coaching, and schedule. So don't be shocked if they not only make the college football playoff, but do some damage while they're in there.
Woo!
Former Michigan quarterback David Cone. Michigan was in there. We're going to bring up that list and the rankings here in a second. But we all know what today is, and I'm not forgetting the graphic. Play it.
This is flaming vodka!
Bend the knee.
Bow to your sensei.
Bow to your sensei. 1.5.
1.5.
Dracarys. 1.5 today.
You don't know if you're joining us for the first time, and if you are, welcome in, welcome to it, welcome to the show. We cannot use my brother's government name.
You better not.
At all. All right, now we got a whole thing drawn up by one of our Booster Club members, which if you're a member of the audience or you watch the show, you're automatically in the Booster Club, the trust tree, under the wing. He wrote out a contract of things that we can say. We can say Flaming Dragon. We can say Flaming. Really anything other than his government name and technically his middle name, but it's really his first name.
Well, let's not be giving
Y'all
too
know
much
what it is?
away.
No, look, it's on there,
All
man.
right.
It's on the sheet of paper.
It's on there.
But, David, who is your most, and let's pull up
Bring up the list.
Let's pull up the rankings.
Bring it up.
So we can see it. And I will say, all right, and this is just the top 10 right here. We have the top 25 as well. You've got Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Oregon 3, Bama 4, Texas 5, Clemson 6, Notre Dame 7, LSU 8, Penn State 9, and Utah 10. Now, do I agree with everything on this list? No. But I think out of all the lists we've seen, toughest places to play, overall offense and defense, this has probably been the closest to somewhat of a right answer. And again, I don't agree with all of it, but there's no Tennessee, I believe, in the top 25.
Yeah, I'll keep going here.
And that's a team that...
You stopped at 10?
Yeah, it's
So Michigan 11, Florida State 12, Miami 13, Texas A&M 14. Then we got Ole Miss, Colorado 16, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, USC, Virginia Tech, NC State, Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma State, and then Iowa 25.
What's the love fest with Virginia Tech?
Or Colorado. I'll let Dragon get into that more. But, I mean, look, I'm looking at the team that just won the College Baseball World Series. Why am I all of a sudden having to defend Tennessee? Like, I guess it's my home state.
Your Tennessee fandom arch origin story.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing because I'm looking at this list. Forget the top 10. Okay. Top 25, No Tennessee in here?
None.
I mean, Missouri, you mentioned that was a great pick, but I'm looking, no Tennessee in this top 25, and defenders of this list and that move could say, well, hey, they went 8-4 a year ago and they're starting a young quarterback. They went 8-4 with Joe Milton, and Nico comes in and they win the bowl game 35-0.
And Nico, I say this, if you've watched our show, and again, I know Joe Milton's a great person, but if I want to make people happy, I'd sell cupcakes and ice cream for a living. David, I would take Nico right now, after having played the sparing amount that he has, as young as he is, I would take Nico right now over Joe Milton at his oldest.
I would too, and I watched the guy play a lot of football. I like Joe Milton. Joe Milton got named the starter at Michigan, transferred out, got named the starter at Tennessee, got beat out by Hendon Hooker, got named the starter again. I know the bowl game's not, we got to take it with a grain of salt, but Iowa is one of the better defenses in the Big Ten last year. They won 35-0.
Nico, the way he moves, I feel like
But even apart from him, is Tennessee's offense not worthy of being in the top 25? I mean, I'm looking at USC here. USC is 19. I think USC, just based on Lincoln Riley's history, deserves to be in this top 25.
But they got a new quarterback, too.
They're losing a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
And power rankings, which include the defensive side of the ball, would be they're at 19. I don't know.
And I know Miller Moss had a good bowl game, but Nico did
had a good against a better defense.
Beat him 56-0. When you look at the top 25, I don't think, and I'd love to open this to both of y'all, that there's another team out there that really got disgraced for not being in the top 25.
I agree with that.
I think y'all two are on point with Missouri and Tennessee. I think Ole Miss at 15 is a joke.
It is.
If you look at this Ole Miss team, and the knock has been on Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin's what? Defense. Their offense has always been good. Here's a top 25 list right here. But this year's Ole Miss team feels different, and there's a couple reasons why. One, they built depth up front on both sides of the ball, which is huge when it comes to playoff runs and winning championships. One, they still got experience at skill position, and you're bringing back your quarterback, and that's the biggest piece. So I would say that, and I don't get this, and maybe y'all can shed a little light on this, but I don't know why they're hyping up Colorado so much. Colorado comes in and ranked 16th. This team won 4 games last year. 4 games and didn't get better up front on either side of the ball. And I'll pull up their schedule here in a second. It's not just a walk in the park for these guys. How is Colorado an 87 overall?
Well, it's because Travis Hunter's on the cover. I'm telling you, they are pumping Colorado. They're going to pump Colorado because you got Travis Hunter, who's probably going to be 99 overall, that plays, offensively and defensively. And Colorado, they get a lot of cachet. And I think it's actually going to hurt Colorado because just like I said, Missouri can be in the role of the hunter and not the hunted because they're not being talked about as much as you're hearing these other teams talked about. I would much rather have it that way if I was Drinkowitz. Colorado is like on the opposite side of that. You won 4 games. You're still going to be bad up front, but you're not looked at like the hunter anymore with the way that you were hyped up, with the way that you talk. Now everybody's out to get you. So you're in almost a worse spot. But back to the Missouri and Tennessee argument. So you can't sit here and say, it's Tennessee, it's because they have a new quarterback. Well, USC has a new quarterback. Oklahoma is sitting there at 17 with a new quarterback. I can go up and down the list. But when I look at the differences, and Ole Miss at 15 being tied with the overall ranking with Texas A&M, I think is disingenuous in my opinion. But they've kind of slided Ole Miss and Tennessee. But how can you have Ole Miss 15 and Missouri not in the top 25? What's the difference between Ole Miss and Missouri? When you look at both their schedules, they're somewhat lighter. I would say Missouri has a lighter schedule than Ole Miss does. They both won 11-2 last year. You could make the case, and you'd be right, that Ole Miss is probably better on defense than Missouri. But I don't.
They're not going that far. But they're seeing Lane Kiffin. They're seeing Lane Kiffin and be on social media, and I think that's a big part of it.
I don't think that's crazy. But when I look at Tennessee and you say, okay, well, they are starting a new quarterback. Look at their defense. James Pierce may be the number 1 defensive player taken. And I know it takes more than one guy. Yeah. We talk about depth all the time. It's not your first 22 that wins. It's your first, in my opinion, 66 that win. But it's an EA Sports team power ranking. When you look at the first true polls that'll come out, which preseason polls really don't matter, a lot of this is going to look different and jumbled up. But, I'm sitting here again, Penn State at 9.
What have we seen?
What offensively, I don't know if Drew Aller can throw a slant against a team when it matters.
Which, if he can, if he's the most improved player in college football next year, Penn State's going to be dangerous.
From a roster standpoint,
that's a
Penn
big
State's
ask.
Always good, but it's not like the Big Ten got worse.
Exactly.
I mean, you only added better teams. So I understand how you look at Penn State and like, oh, obviously they're going to do better this year. What has Drew Aller shown anybody? I wouldn't be surprised.
He has the most to lose and gain.
If there's a quarterback, a high-profile quarterback right now that get replaced mid-year, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Drew Aller.
I wouldn't be shocked if it was Drew Aller or DJU at Florida State.
That one kid came in, talking about bowl games, that one kid came in and played well for Penn State.
He looked good.
But I think he's more of a runner. I don't know.
But that's who Penn State, and I know they had, the kid who went there for 6 years, played Auburn a couple times.
Sean Clifford.
Sean Clifford, he was there from. But before that, what was it, Trace McSorley?
Yeah.
Who's out there just a little pup running around, scatting around. When I see Penn State, they need that.
Drew Aller's like a lot more Christian Hackenberg to me. He's like a poor man's Christian Hackenberg, if I'm going to be honest. And Christian Hackenberg didn't live up to the hype. And look, Drew, again, and you look at the numbers, you're like, oh, well, he had 20 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. If you go back and watch the Penn State games against teams that mattered, all right, the teams that Penn State wasn't just able to line up and play a game of I beat you at birth, they had no chemistry. They weren't able to throw the ball. It was so bad. Michigan in the second half said, you know what? We're not going to throw the ball. Y'all are so bad throwing it that we're not even going to risk throwing a pick six or doing anything like that. We're just going to run the ball because you guys have no functionality from a passing standpoint on offense. Now, will it be better with Fleming this year? We'll see. For Drew's case, I hope. But again, Clemson at 6.
Well, how much do we really know about this Clemson team? I know from a skill position, they're not the same Clemson team we're used to. But I think defensively, they're going to be pretty talented.
Well, Clemson's been good defensively. I'm not worried about Clemson being good.
They bring back Cade Klubnik, which is a big piece. You lose Shipley, but I do think they have, I'm trying to remember this kid's name. They have one skill position. His name's Bo something, who's pretty talented.
Well,
but you're going to, and we're not saying 6. Well, they're going to lose to Georgia week 1. I think we can.
They're going to get. I'm taking Georgia minus.
But I think at the end of the year, the way the ACC's kind of slanted out, we don't know that much about Florida State with DJU with all they left. Miami's still a question mark.
And I don't think Miami plays.
I can see Clemson ending the year in a top 10 finish.
Nothing would shock me, but Flaming, the fact that you had to say, oh, when we're talking about Clemson's skill position, and again, I think Cade Klubnik has a pretty high upside. I don't think he's had a lot of help around him. And I think Garrett Riley's play calling in the red zone was absolute garbage last year, and I think he would tell you that. But the fact that you had to look at me and say, well, they got that one guy, and I can't even remember his name, that speaks volumes to me at Clemson. Because what we used to say about Clemson is, are you seeing these cats running around?
Like, even when Clemson
Hopkins,
was down.
T. Higgins?
Like, even when Clemson was down, they still had, I remember for some reason, we'd always play Clemson in, the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
Yeah.
For, a 5-year stretch. And it didn't matter who they, you remember C.J. Spiller. Even their backup.
Travis Etienne.
We're so good, dude. It's just crazy to see.
Cade Klubnik is in a similar situation to me as Drew Aller, right? Where it seems like there's still more ceiling in terms of room for improvement for those guys, and their teams both need them to excel to that ceiling.
In that circumstance, I agree with you. I will say from a player type standpoint, though, and I think you'll agree with me, I do think if I had to pick somebody to make the throws in a game right now, I would take Cade Klubnik over Drew Aller and the running of it. Look, Cade Klubnik isn't winning the 100 meters for the United States Olympic sprint team. I'm not saying that. But Drew Aller struggles to move well. In my opinion.
Yeah, I wasn't going
I know
that direction with it, but just in terms of the rest of the rosters being pretty solid, but they need great quarterback play to be college football playoff teams, but the rest of the rosters not being so solid that they can just put anyone back there. They're not Georgia or Oregon right now.
Quickly, I want to get
Miami does not play Clemson.
I do have Clemson's schedule if y'all want to go through it too. What's NC State at 21? What's our thought on NC State this year?
Good question.
I mean, you lost Peyton Wilson.
Yep.
Who I think is going to be an absolute
one of the most
in
underrated
draft.
guys. When Luke Kuechly watches your tape at linebacker and he's like, this cat can
we saw the quarterback transfer that underperform. I think we all know that. So, I mean, you walk in with a 21 rank, 87 overall. I mean, what are they seeing that we're not? Do you believe in
Grayson McCall did transfer?
Yeah, Grayson McCall is at NC State. He's got to stay healthy, though.
But that's I'm interested to see Grayson fit in a system like that.
I think when you look at the way Dave Doran has put that program together, do I think NC State ends up as a top 25 team? I don't think that's nearly as crazy as sticking Ole Miss behind Texas A&M or not having Missouri or Tennessee in the top 25. So, I mean, you could make a rational argument with them being in the ACC, and we'll have to look at that schedule. But I'm telling you guys right now, too, and I know they have them 10th up there. This Utah team, and I'm going to continue to say it, and we talk about Cam Rising's health. The 2 years he's been healthy, like when we were talking about Andy Staples, they won the conference. Brant Keithy's coming back. They're entering the Big 12 this first year. Everybody talks about Kansas State, and that's cool. Avery Johnson's got to prove that he can throw the ball to me, or else they're just going to be a hammerhead offense that attempts to throw the ball every now and then. But Utah, to me, is dangerous. Like, sneak up and make the Final Four, get to the national championship game. Dangerous.
And remember who Brent Keefe is now. Like, Brent Keefe's a dog.
Yeah, he was in front of Dalton.
He's in the NFL now. Well, I mean, playing for the Bills. But before that, Brent Keefe was the starting tight end for Utah. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, I've got no problem with the top 5. I think they pretty much nailed it.
Notre Dame at 7. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. I think Notre Dame has a chance to be really good, but I'm looking at that Week 1 game against Texas A&M. They're walking into a nightmare now. They're walking into a nightmare.
A lot of built
Riley
up.
Leonard is very talented. Shout out Fairhope to 251, all that stuff. But Mike Elko knows him, right? He knows on the doll where you don't like it, right? So, because they were together at Duke. Notre Dame, I think they got a good chance to make the college football playoff. But you look at Notre Dame's schedule, man, like we talk about Florida's, we talk about the strength of this team's schedules, the worst we've ever seen. When you look at Notre Dame's, man, like let's pull up Notre Dame's schedule real quick, because we went through it the other day, and I do want to get to the Booster Club. We do have the phone lines open in 2:45 p.m. Central, 1-855-236-3228. But roll through it.
All right, Notre Dame schedule Week 1, Texas A&M
on the road.
On the road.
Yeah,
correct.
Make sure we say.
Yeah. I didn't know if that was on a neutral side or not. Week 2, Northern Illinois at home.
Win.
At Purdue, Week 3.
Should be a win.
The Fighting Ben Roethlisberger's at home.
Should be a win.
Louisville at home.
Not an easy
fun
win. And I say non-conference. Notre Dame's not in a conference, so it's all non-conference. But that's not a walk amongst the tulips.
Stanford at home.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech at home.
It just is a different Georgia Tech team. Watch out for Georgia Tech Week 1 too now.
And I might take a little bit of a peek at the spreads already. That Florida State Georgia Tech spread. I'll be looking at Georgia Tech.
That's game 1 in Ireland, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Then you have Navy at home. Should win that game.
Never easy, though, with triple.
FSU at home. Virginia at home. Army at home. And you go to the road at the end of the year at USC.
I mean, that's not an easy schedule. Like, we've made fun of Notre Dame before for not being in a conference and maybe playing somewhat of an easier schedule. That is not. And there's some sneaky ones. Like, and whenever you play triple option teams, I always tell people this, I would never, ever, if I had power over it, schedule, what's my non-conference rules? Never schedule in triple option, because now I got to take a couple weeks out of spring practice to work on it. It's a totally different thing with eye discipline. It takes up so much time, even though you're playing against an inferior opponent. You have Army too, which is a different version of it. They're kind of a more evolved offensive version of the triple option. But I never play triple option teams, and I never play teams that are based on a religion, because nobody fights harder for longer than those guys. I would never schedule BYU. Like, I would never schedule SMU. And it's just, I would never do it. What's up, YouTube? Hit that subscribe button, because it'll be way better than watching whatever attempt at a debate that was last night.